Hey there. Welcome to my notes on using models to solve inequalities. So, our directions here state write an inequality for each model and then solve the inequality. So, number one, I see two negative x's, so I'm going to write negative 2x is less than or equal to 6. Now, we always circle our variables, so circle negative 2x. The opposite of multiplication is division, so I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is a 1 in disguise. And because I divided both sides by a negative, I need to remember to flip the symbol. So 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3. So I'm going to write up here, flip, so that I remember what it looks like when I need to flip. And that's when you multiply or divide both sides by a negative. Now, I'm going to review the check on the first two problems so you remember how to check. So the first check is just checking the number. So I plug the number in and see if both sides equal 6. So negative 2 times negative 3, two negatives makes a positive, so it is positive 6. So the number does check. Now to check to make sure the symbols go in the correct way, I pick a number greater than negative 3. Since 0 is greater than negative 3, I always like to use 0 if I can. So negative 2 times 0 is 0. And is 0 less than or equal to 6? It is, so that means my symbol is going the correct way. And I move on. But also, there's one other way to write this that I do want to review, and you read it backwards. So negative 3 is less than or equal to x. Okay, and I like to box in my two answers. And I'm done. Okay, let's look at number 2, and this is the last one that I will review the check. Okay, so we have an x, and we have 3 positives. So I'm going to say x plus 3 is less than negative 3. Since this is an addition problem, I'm going to set up my t, and I'm going to remember to circle my variable. Okay, what's the opposite of adding 3? Subtracting 3. Okay, 3 minus 3 cancels and equals 0. So x is less than negative 6. Or I can read it backwards and say negative 6 is greater than x. And box that in. Now, I've got to remember to check, so I'm going to check the number first. So I'm going to plug negative 6 back into the original, and I'm going to add 3 to it. Negative 6 plus 3 is negative 3 because I subtract and keep the sign of the most. And both sides equal negative 3, so I know the number is correct. Now, if I want to check to make sure the symbol is correct, I got to pick a number less than negative 6. So I'm going to choose negative 7. Negative 7 plus 3 is negative 4. I subtract and keep the sign of the most. Is negative 4 less than negative 3? It is. My answer checks, and I'm good to go. So remember, when you're solving inequalities, you have to check the number and to make sure the symbols go in the correct way. Okay, let's look at number 3. We have negative x is greater than negative 4. Now, we talked about this before. If there is no number or coefficient of x, then what number is really there? And it's in disguise. It's correct, it's a 1. So I have negative 1x is greater than negative 4. Now, because the negative is there, I do not have x by itself. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide by negative 1. What I do to one side, I must do to the other. Negative 1 divided by negative 1 is a 1 in disguise. And because I divided by a negative, I've got to remember to flip it. So less than negative 4 divided by negative 1 is positive 4. So x is less than 4, or 4 is greater than x. So I box it in. And be sure when you're doing these on your own that you are checking. One thing I'm going to add here, so I remember, is flip. So when I look back at my notes, I can see when it is that I flipped. Okay, number 4. We have x plus -3 is less than 6. Now, you could also write, and we can put this over here, another way to write this is x minus 3 is less than 6. Those two inequalities are exactly the same. Okay, now circle your variable and set up your t. Now, I know a lot of you are probably thinking the opposite of addition is subtraction, so we're going to subtract from both sides. But we're actually not going to subtract because we have 3 negatives here. And really, if we undo KCC, this is actually -3. So what's the opposite of subtracting 3, which is adding 3? And another way of looking at it is, how do you cancel out 3 negatives? Well, you add 3 positives. And that's the additive inverse, so that equals 0. X is less than, what's 6 plus 3? 9. Or you can read it backwards and say 9 is greater than x. Okay, box it in. And that is all. Now, at this time, you can pause the video and do the back on your own. See if you can get it right. Then, after you've done the back, you can turn the video back on and check your work. So go ahead and pause the video. Okay, welcome back. Let's check to see how you did here. I'm going to run through these quickly since you should have already done these on your own. So we have 3x is greater than -3. We're going to circle the variable. The opposite of multiplication is division. So we're going to divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 is a 1 in disguise. So x is greater than -1, or -1 is less than x. Okay, moving on to number 6. We have 3 x's are greater than 6. So circle your variable. The opposite of multiplication is division, so I'm going to divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 is a 1 in disguise, so x is greater than 2, or 2 is less than x. And I box in both answers. Okay, moving right along, we have 2 more to go. So we have 7 and 8. So let's look at number 7. We have x plus -2 is less than 5. And remember, let's put this over here. We could also write this another way. X minus 2 is less than 5. Okay, circle your variable. Set up your t. Remember, how do you cancel out 2 negatives? You need 2 positives. And another way of looking at this problem is, if you look at undo the addition here, we can turn this to a subtraction. So that's another reason we're adding 2, because the opposite of subtracting 2 is adding 2. Okay, so -2 plus 2, that's the additive inverse. They cancel and equal 0. Bring down your x, bring down your less than symbol, and 5 plus 2 is 7. Or
Miss Bundy, you have a call on 2. Miss Bundy, line 2.
Or 7 is greater than x. So box it in. And we are done with that problem. Okay, last one. We can say x plus -2 is greater than or equal to -6. Remember, another way to write it is x minus 2 is greater than or equal to -6. Now, for the same reason above, we can cancel out 2 negatives by adding 2 positives to both sides. Additive inverse says that that equals 0. Bring down your x, bring down your symbol, and negative 6 plus 2 is in fact negative 4. Or you could say negative 4 is less than or equal to x. Okay, box it in. And that concludes our notes on using models to solve inequalities. I hope you learned something. Good luck with your classwork and homework, and have a great day.